Welcome to Face to Face. Here we discuss the hottest issues for this year's two sessions, the most important annual meeting on China's political calendar. China says it will take stronger measures to achieve peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. The National Emissions Trading Scheme is a big step and a topic that attracted much attention in this year's two sessions. It's our honor to have Richard L. Sender, founder of Chicago Climate Exchange, and Dai Xiansheng, chairman of Tianjin Climate Exchange, as our guests today. Also, Mr. Sender was named the father of carbon trading by Time magazine. Your participation will help our viewers understand how we are addressing the challenge of climate change and promoting green development as a global consensus. Welcome to the show. So, Mr. Dai, let me start with you first. China officially launched a national trading market more than half a year ago. It is one of the core policy tools to achieve the country's targets of carbon peak and carbon neutrality, of course. Why is China taking this step now?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this interview. It's my great pleasure to meet online with my good friend, Mr. Sander. I think today's topic and our action meets the demands of our life. So in this interview, my voice and opinion only represents my own stance. You asked the question about why China initiated this emission trading system. By administrative order is not enough to implement to reach the target of carbon peak and carbon neutrality in China. Right now, in the world, the global carbon emission is divided into two systems. There are two tools. One is the carbon emission trading, and another is carbon tax. So it is important tool to curb the carbon emissions, and also by purchasing our carbon trade power can help us reach our target in this regard. So under such circumstances, we rolled out the emission trading system in China. It is very important for us to involve different stakeholders, including the investors, to meet the demands of relevant stakeholders and also to fulfill the information gaps. So this nationwide board of emission trading is a positive stance of China. First, we set a clear pricing for the carbon emission so that the enterprises can buy and sell their carbon rights, and they can fulfill their emission targets throughout this system. And secondly, the enterprises can reduce their carbon emission costs and readjust and optimize their industrial structure. And third, we can diverge and direct the social capital to the areas needed, and also to better coordinate the carbon emission of individuals and also the enterprises, so that we can make a contribution to the green development. And fourth, such a trading system at national level can promote the regional development in China.
Thank you, Mr. Dai. And Mr. Sender, you are the founder of the world's first exchange to facilitate the reduction and trading of all 6 greenhouse gases. Why did you start Climate Exchange in Chicago, and what is the role of this market-based mechanism?
We started the market as most markets begin. There had been a fundamental change over the last 20 to 40 years where concentrations of carbon into the atmosphere existed. If we study other markets ranging from the birth of stock trading in Amsterdam to 1605 to the birth of wheat trading in 1848 to the birth of the acid rain program, they have very common characteristics. And one of them is a rising awareness of an enormous problem in a commodity or something environmental. In the 80s, the environmental trigger was smog and acid rain in Chicago, and that prompted the birth of the first emissions market. In the case of CO2 and climate change, it was two summits, one in 1992 and one in 1997. It appeared to me that there was a fundamental change going on in the world and that nations were preparing to deal with climate change and were beginning to see that there was sufficient scientific evidence to worry about this. I am at the University of Chicago. My mentor and friend was Ronald Coase. And through studying with him, I learned that voluntary actions had a role in a mature economy, and that perhaps in the absence of federal legislation, a voluntary market for the reduction of all 6 greenhouse gases was feasible. All of the conditions were there. We had a major structural change. That was key. We knew how to trade because of the development of rights to emit. That became a commodity in the same way that gold and wheat and various industrial commodities entered the feasible set. So the stage was set, and only the actors need to be present. So we set on a mission to visit hundreds of emitters from the power sector, the chip sector, from steel making to chemical making, and comb the United States to find companies that would be willing to enter into a private contract where they were obliged to reduce emissions. We set up a climate accord. We had consensus meetings. We spoke to companies like Ford and DuPont, all of which engaged us and began the effort with a spot market in CO2 that was rules-based and that had been consistent with monitoring, verification, and all the things that we had learned to make it successful from our activity in the acid rain program.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sender. And Mr. Dai, China aims to accelerate the development of a green and low carbon economic cycle. So how does the carbon trading market work, and will it actually help Chinese enterprises to develop sustainably and to achieve carbon neutrality at the end of the day?
It's a very good question. Judging from international practice, the carbon trading makes sure that the responsibility of carbon emissions is shouldered by each and every enterprise. It also promotes the innovation of green technologies and also development of the industry. So by introducing such a trading system, we can help reach the target of economic development. We also set a timetable and also roll out the measures to be taken by the enterprises so that enterprises can reach their development goals at a lower cost within such a system, these enterprises are allowed to purchase the emissions right. They can purchase the right from another enterprise. So this comparative advantage ensures that the enterprises can trade their emissions right effectively. And this system helps improve the energy efficiency. In the future, we can also rely on the PV electricity and also the forest to carbon storage, carbon exchange. So these measures contribute to the development of the enterprises and also protects the green development. So we can achieve the carbon emissions through the carbon emissions exchange. So if an enterprise has an unused carbon right, they can be sold. The right can be sold to another enterprise. And we can use this to optimize the PV industry. So this will serve as a toolkit to promote the green development of the enterprises. So the enterprises need to obey the requirements of the contract fulfillment. They need to purchase the carbon emissions right and to improve their energy efficiency. And this can help reduce their cost of contract implementation. So this will be the forest carbon footprint can be a toolkit for the enterprises. So the enterprises can sell their forest footprint in the trading system. This will promote the development and coordinate the development of the traditional energy market and also the green market. So this will promote the economic cycle, the environmental cycle, and the enterprises will be allowed to participate in the process of green development.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Let's continue. So the next question is going to be for Mr. Sender. So Mr. Sender, what opportunities and challenges do you see, the carbon trading system bring to China? Do you think the program will actually help China deliver its promises to control CO2 emissions and decarbonize the economy?
I think it's very important for you and your viewers to understand that carbon markets are no different than any other markets. So what have been the gains to China being part of the WTO? They are the standard gains from trade associated with economists like David Ricardo. Price sends an important signal. In a cap and trade market, two things happen. Number one is a cap. So the government says you will reduce emissions to a certain level, and that will go on over time. But that cap allows trading. So for example, if there are two companies like Dye Power and Sandor Power, and we're both required to cut emissions by 20%, perhaps Dye Power is more efficient than Sandor Power. So I can't reduce my emissions quickly. So Dye Power reduces its emissions more than is required, and I buy them. Therefore, I can spend a year or two modifying my equipment, installing pollution abatement devices. I don't have to fire people, and I can transit in an orderly way to a low carbon emission economy. Most importantly, that price of those reductions is a signal to the millions of Chinese entrepreneurs to invent products that reduce emissions. They can do a simple arithmetic example. If they can cut it by 50 RMB, 100 RMB, 500 RMB, and the system requires millions of reductions, they have a very simple incentive to invent new technologies by putting a price on carbon and know the value of their new technologies. It will incentivize clean power. It will incentivize the use of electricity. It will incentivize biodiesels, all of which price is a critical signal. It works brilliantly in China today. Why not harness that same entrepreneurship and that same motivation in the private sector to produce a world that's better with regard to health, to the enjoyment of its natural resources? Most importantly, if not equally important, is once the technology is available, it can be applied to other areas. For example, desertification. China has nearly a significant amount of the world's population, call it 20%, but only 7% of the water. And I think the next big crisis will be in clean water and enough to do. So there's two important things. One, to deal with climate change, to deal with fires and other natural disasters. The second is to develop a mature financial sector that will be able to deal with other shortages and ones that the public will have to deal with. So it is twofold, immediate and in the future.
Okay, and Mr. Dai, the national carbon trading system has been touted as a significant step for China. Will the program have a desired effect on carbon management and facilitate a rapid energy transition in China? How does the Chinese government prepare to cope with these challenges and doubts?
The national carbon trading system has started operation. It is important for China to achieve carbon management and facilitate the energy transition. At present, the traditional power electricity, a way of generating electricity has taken up a large percent. By end of 2020, China's installed capacity of coal-fired power has decreased to less than 50%. This is a historic low, but China still has a long way to go in terms of energy cuts and energy transition. It is important to make sure that the market entity implements the national guidelines and the government policies. We need to put in place a fixed and also flexible policy system so that the development is promoted in a sound way, and we can achieve a smooth transition to a new energy mix. This is not only beneficial to China, but also is very important and also very exciting for the international market. At present, the China National Carbon Trading System has newly started. We have a lot of space to improve. We still face some problems. For example, the market entities, the number of market entities is small. The number of voluntary emitted enterprises is small. Still, the market demands remain to be met. For example, we need to align the standard of domestic and international emission standards. We also need to align the technologies of carbon emission, both at home and abroad. Personally speaking, the major toolkit to meet the challenges is to first improve the policies and improve the market tools. We need to gradually improve the laws and regulations to put in place a sound system. And second, we need to improve the management of carbon emission and to improve the quality of carbon emission. Third, we need to include more enterprises and players in the market of the industries. Besides, we need to enrich the diversity of the carbon emitters, the carbon emission products, for example, the futures. We need to improve the risk management methods. We need to attach great importance to the carbon emission. We need to harness the power of a number of technologies, including the blockchain technology. This blockchain technology is very important in promoting the carbon trading system. We need to reap more fruits through the blockchain technology to better the digitalization of the market. During the 14th five-year plan period, hopefully we can improve the market and policies so that we can put in place a transparent mechanism, a sound legal system. And during the process, each market player has to make its own contribution and also to give the feedback to help the policymakers to improve the policy system so that we can put in place an efficient and market-oriented trading system with Chinese characteristics.
Mr. Sender, China's National Emissions Trading Scheme, ETS, came more than 15 years after the European Union launched the world's first carbon trading platform. However, it is said that the country, China's carbon market, will be the largest in the world once it's fully operating. Do you share that expectation? And what could China learn from the previous international trading scheme?
What we can learn is that environmental markets have functioned effectively for 3 decades. They require very, very simple rules. They have to be very well regulated, and the rules of trading have to be very, very clear. So there's an important role for regulation in the markets. They have to ensure that there is participation by hedgers, utilities that actually produce the emissions, and they must dominate the market, and speculation must be carefully controlled. It is very important to learn that there is always an opportunity with markets for bad actors, and China has to be very, very careful to make sure that the markets are not dominated by speculators. The important thing is that information be transparent. that there be regular dispersals of how much the emissions are on a regular basis. Markets survive and eat data and information. The more knowledge that participants have on everything from weather to the production and out of a particular stack, all goes into that. And what we've learned, the more transparent the market, the clearer the rules, the clearer the strict controls on speculation, the better the market is. And that is a point of clear. It doesn't matter if it's acid rain in the United States. It doesn't matter if it's California's cap and trade program or the European Union. They have common foods, common characteristics. A critical part is to educate. Educate the academics, educate the students, educate the accountants, educate the lawyers, educate the back office, educate the regulator, educate the mayors, that all of this is a massive educational job like any other consumption of a consumer good. And the heart is regulation, transparency, education. Those are in addition to building the institutions such as exchanges and the contracts that train. Within that, there's room for ample innovation in the blockchain. So it can not only come as learning what others have done, but actually taking a lead in certain aspects of technologies that have to do with markets. Furthermore, I believe that markets can be a catalyst for peace, that by linking markets in China to markets in Europe to markets in the United States, it will effectively bind all of the countries of the world together and have them address a common problem such as clean air, clean oceans, etc. And that common resolve, just like trade, will be a catalyst for peace. And China could lead the way with the biggest, most effective market and also create inventive activity that links it to other nations in dealing with environmental objectives. I couldn't be more excited and watch and hope to the small efforts that Dr. Dai and I started 15 years ago grows into the most important system in the world. China has the ability to do it. The time is now, and the country is in the right position to take a leadership role.
And speaking of China taking a leadership role, very, very quickly, I want to get both your thoughts on hydrogen power. Is it practical now to talk about, enlarge the scale of hydrogen power, commercialization of it, or is it just a way too long shot? Mr. Sender.
Yeah, but most importantly, if I could just go back to price is important. Mm-hmm. And that is the key. That will set off the entrepreneurship. And the price signal will let us know if hydrogen is the proper technology. The idea is to set the price and let the inventors, the universities, the academics choose that. So it's very important. There's always a great temptation to bet on the technology. And what we've seen is that once you price carbon, then the market can sort out the proper technology. Having said that, the more technologies that we can figure out, the better we will be. And the more we can encourage new technologies and light a flame and see which one flourishes, the better off we will be. So hydrogen is a potential. Wind, solar, tidal power. We haven't even begun to see the number of potential inventions that could emerge from a transparent price that motivates inventive activity.
那戴先生，您觉得呢？
我认为它在一个恰当的时候。
I think the hydrogen power has come at the right time. The traditional energy, the fossil energy has played their due roles. We also need the new non-fossil fuels. So the hydrogen power has utilization has come at a right time.
Okay. Thank you so much for all of your insights. That was Mr. Richard Sender, founder of Chicago Climate Exchange, and Mr. Dai Xiansheng, chairman of Tianjin Climate Exchange. Thank you so much for your analysis. And that comes to the end of Face to Face today. We had a lot of discussion on climate change and China's carbon trading scheme. Hope you learned something valuable from our discussions. I'm Xia Cheng in Beijing. Talk soon.